your nerves. You have to wait for the right moment to make that acceleration. But this is also the kind of sprint, Phil, where we're looking now. I told you we're going to be looking at speeds approaching 70 kilometers an hour. We're doing faster than 40 miles an hour now.
We're going to hit 50 miles an hour if we keep this up, and that's 80 kilometers an hour, because this wind that we get in the last 2 kilometers, there's nothing, only the fields here as we head directly towards the museum on Utah Beach. And if they don't stop, then they go into La Manche. And the drive for Katusha now, their big sprinter, Alexander Kristoff, is who they're thinking of.
Yeah, Christoph, his team has the red jersey with the K right in the middle. Now, all of a sudden, Dimension Data have got themselves organised. 1, 2, 3, 4 riders from Dimension Data. It's Edvald Bosenhagen is right in there, and he's about to take over control at the front. And that, of course, is for Mark Cavendish. You've got to keep organised. We're now, the next banner they will see, Phil, will be the red kite. 1 kilometre to go to the finish. And it's going to take them at these speeds 1 kilometre in a minute.
I reckon faster, Paul, about 47, 50 seconds in that last kilometre, because they're going to get the full benefit of the wind. They're into the barriers.
I think the rider who went down from Bora Argenville was the Irish rider, Sam Bennett. But there you've got the top men in the sport. Cavendish ahead of Kittel, over on the right-hand side, Andre Greipel, and not far away, Brian Coquart, and in the mix as well, Peter Sagan.
Wow, it's all about getting it right. Well, poor old Bennett there, one of only a couple of Irish riders in the race. He is the sprinter, and he was right up amongst it there. For a while it looked as though Peter Sagan was going to do something, then threw on the...
Well, Utah Beach has seen a dramatic finish, a nasty accident, the provisional result then. So it's Mark Cavendish gets the victory ahead of Marcel Kittel, the big favourite on the day. This is the damage, though, and it was that barriers when we came into the final couple of kilometres there. So many risks being taken. I think most of the overall contenders got in there nice and safely. But I do think that rider coming in from Bora Argan, I do think it was the Irish rider, Sam Bennett, who went down very hard. And the first rider to go down was a Katusha rider. But the big names did manage to survive. Greipel over on the right-hand side, but the Manx Missile strikes again with a perfectly timed sprint, a brilliant lead out by his man, Mark Renshaw. That's enough. People question Cavendish's season this year, Phil, as to whether he was trying to do too much, but he's actually got it spot on here. I wonder what's up next, the Olympic Games.
He's got one thing he always dreamed of, and Paul, he's also got himself 27 wins in the Tour de France now. He's only one short of the great Belgian Eddy Merckx. Bernard Hinault, sorry. And Hinault's places aren't as good as Mark, so Mark will go second.
That is the kick. That is all he needed, and it just goes to show he's still got that punch coming down towards the end. He really is a special guy when he gets it right. And he's been dreaming about this, and I suppose now he can not worry too much about the fact that he didn't win the British National Championships. No. He finished in second place, but he was coming off antibiotics at the time.
And there is the result. Sprinters all, Cavendish, Kittel, Sagan, Greipel. Ed Turns, watch for him. It's his first Tour de France. We knew he was fast. Laporte was in 6th place. Coquart 7th. Good result for the Frenchman. Christophe in 8th place. And the first timer from Great Britain, Danny McClay, in 9th place. What a great result for him. And the evergreen Henderson coming over the line for New Zealand in 10th spot.
The stage starts in Saint-Lô, but it makes its way through to Cherbourg on Cotentin. It's 183 kilometres. There are 3 categorised climbs within the first 52 Ks in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. But the most significant obstacle on today's stage is the final climb through to the finish line. Category 3, it's not particularly long at just 2 kilometres, but there are some steep sections as much as a gradient of 14%. Not a day for the sprinters. Certainly not a day for the pure sprinters anyway, but Peter Sagan is amongst the contenders. Yellow jersey, all smiles for Mark Cavendish with the handlebar tape and the helmet to match. And riding at the front with the other wearers of the various leaders' jerseys for the classifications, and amongst them Paul Voss was the first to attack wearing the King of the Mountains jersey to try and get himself up the road for the first 2 climbs of the day. He managed to do so, but having been joined by 3 other riders, He missed out on the points on the first two climbs that have been contested. At the back of the group is the Norwegian. This is Vegard Breen at the back of the group. He won over the top of the first climb on today's stage. At the front from Trek Segafredo is Jesper Stuyven. He won over the second climb of the day. There is one more Category 4 climb to come before the climb through to the finish line. Paul Voss has lost contact with this group, and you can see he's now at 10 seconds. Here he is. They've gone all out with the bike. It's got the polka dots on it to match the jersey. He's got a teammate that is also in that breakaway. Benedetti, the Italian rider from Bora Argon 18, is with the other two that are ever so slightly off the front from his teammate. And you can see Benedetti with the red helmet on, sitting at the back of the group, no doubt waiting for Paul Voss, hoping that he can return. And he is almost there. And they are almost at the next climb of the day, the Côte de Montpenchon. And they are onto it, a 1.2 kilometre climb. You can see almost 6% the average gradient. Paul Voss has got his work cut out if he's any chance to claw his way back and collect the 1 point that is on offer to absolutely secure that jersey. Breen and Stuyven, the two riders at the front of this group, the Norwegian with the hint of green in amongst all that black. He's on 1 point, so too is Jesper Stuyven. Paul Voss is on 2 points. If one of those riders is to win the 1 point that's up for grabs here and get equal with Paul Voss, it would come down to a countback between them. But then we've got the finish of the stage as well, where there is 2 points up for grabs for the winner of the stage. Voss has almost made it back. Benedetti still sitting at the back of the group. Now the sprint is on. Breen it is who opens it up. Stuyven in second spot, aiming to try and collect the extra point that is on offer to try and take the lead in the King of the Mountains classification. Well, at least get on par with Paul Voss. And Benedetti has got the job for Bora Argon 18 to try and collect that point himself, which will protect the lead of Voss. It's becoming quite a tactical affair at the front of the race. Stuyven waiting patiently. He's the favourite between these riders, given his reputation for the one-day classics. He packs plenty of punch. Benedetti looks as if he's just laying off ever so slightly to try and catch them by surprise. Breen and Stuyven shoulder to shoulder. Benedetti's not up to the task. And Jesper Stuyven collects himself 1 more point in the race for the King of the Mountains classification. So he now moves to 2 points equal with Paul Voss, once he gets there, of course. And he almost is, as Breen has lost contact by quite some margin. The first timer in the race, and Jesper Stuyven over the top of the climb in first spot. The Côte de Montpenchon. Here comes Paul Voss. He now finds himself, when it goes to the countback, in second place in the race for this white jersey with the red dots, the King of the Mountains jersey. It's been a good day out for Paul Voss, as it was yesterday, getting himself in the breakaway, and just as we saw 1 day ago, doing it with another teammate with him. It was Barta yesterday from the Czech Republic. Today, it's Benedetti, one of the Italian riders on this German outfit. And now it's time for a bite to eat for Jesper Stuyven. A long stint from here before they get to the next obstacle of the day, which is the intermediate sprint. The intermediate sprint comes with 75.5 kilometres to go. And from this point until there, we won't see much action, certainly from the main peloton. It will just be the Dimension Data squad, led here by Steve Cummings, containing that breakaway group. Mark Renshaw in the all-black colours. Another assist to be added to his great list of supporting roles for Mark Cavendish throughout what has been an extraordinary career And Cavendish getting the chance to enjoy it with Bernard Eisel and Edvald Bosenhagen. Renshaw, Bosenhagen and Eisel have been three riders that played such a big role in the career of Mark Cavendish, and he really said that it made it even more special yesterday to be able to share the moment with them. This conversation at the front is about Paul Voss and whether he is continuing to try and come across to these three. Still 130 kilometres to race, and 4 is far better than 3. Weather for ducks today. Thomas Voeckler sitting at the back of the peloton did exactly as you forecast yesterday. Once it got frantic towards the end of the stage, he just let the race drift away from him. He conceded a minute and a half. And once we make that journey south and we get towards the Pyrenees, you could almost put the house on it that Thomas Voeckler is going to get himself into a breakaway. Steve Cummings still setting the tempo at the front for Dimension Data. We'll see a lot of Steve throughout today's stage. The squad would have been hoping that Edvald Bosenhagen would be a contender for a day like this, but you can't help but wonder how much that fall yesterday will knock out of his power resources today. And a little problem at the back of the peloton. Hopefully nobody seriously injured here. And a little exchanging of some food amongst the riders from Orica Bike Exchange. This is Michael Albacini at the back of the group, which is a rare position for him. Steph Clement calling for some service from the IM Cycling squad. This is Rui Costa from the Lamprey team, one of the favourites for the stage today. Michael Matthews is also amongst them from Orica Bike Exchange, another man spoken about as a possible winner of today's stage. And the edX Quickstep team with a whole host of riders involved. Nearest the picture in the Lamprey colours is the former world champion, Rui Costa of Portugal. And Joaquim Rodriguez, the man who won a similar stage last year, stage 3 to the top of the Mer de Huy, which is in Belgium, finds himself gingerly on the side of the road.
This is Rui Costa from the Lamprey Merida team. Arashiro, he's the man, the Japanese rider, handed off his own front wheel to team leader Costa. He's on his way, and Arashiro will wait for service. And there it is, the mechanic running up, back wheel and front wheel in hand.
Marcel Kittel with the black colours on from edX Quickstep, just remounting his bike. Off to the side from edX Quickstep is also Tony Martin, who has had some horrible crashes in the Tour de France. Was that Matteo Tessato riding the opposite direction back down the course, which is actually illegal for safety reasons.
Well, one of the Tinkoff riders on the side, and I couldn't quite see who it was. We see Rick Verbrugge here, the team director of YAM Cycling, former
Contador.
Tour de France stage winner himself, and it is Contador.
He looks okay, but he looks frustrated, and that is understandable. Alberto Contador, the last 24 hours have not been kind to him. Tony Martin gives him a little pat on the back because Tony Martin has full respect for Contador, and understandably so. Maciej Bodnar is the other rider from Tinkoff that's waiting with Alberto Contador, powerhouse from Poland.
Well, when I saw a Tinkoff rider turn around and come back, that tells you immediately it's someone important. And in Tinkoff team, there are two important riders in terms of winning at the Tour de France, Alberto Contador and Peter Sagan. Not a good sign for Alberto. Hopefully no more damage, but when it rains, it pours.
Literally, today. The good news each time we've seen... As we return to the breakaway group of 4, they make their way through the town of Coutances. It is Jesper Stuyven at the front, followed by Casera Benedetti. It's then Paul Voss and Vegan Breen at the back of the group. So two of the teams that we saw in the breakaway yesterday have got themselves represented again, and they are both wildcard invitations to the race. Might get a chance to see the cathedral in the centre of this town shortly. And
right on cue.
Perfect. The Cathedral of Notre Dame de Constance. It dates back to around 430. But it was then destroyed by the Normans in 866. Before, in the 11th century, it was rebuilt and sanctified on the 8th of December 1057 in the presence of the Duke Guillaume, who went on to be the future King of England some 10 years later. And throughout the church, as you look around it, there are plenty of little chapels attached to it, which show from back in a period when church was visited quite regularly and they had multiple services. It was also significantly damaged throughout the Second World War, particularly in 1944 with the D-Day landings.
Well, just watching the riders move through the town here, we saw how narrow they got. The crowds are huge, but very narrow, twisting and turning, and on cobblestones right at the top of that hill as they go through town. They're the sort of moments, although not high speed, they're always dangerous little moments for a touchdown, someone slipping out unexpectedly. That's exactly what happened to Alberto Contador yesterday, and it was dry. So today is much more treacherous, and it's all those little things, the change of the road surface, those little smaller sections and more narrow sections they have to go through. Chris Froome, he's aware of all that stuff, and of course a great example 2 years ago, Chris Froome crashing his way out of the Tour de France, went down twice before they even reached a cobbled section that year, which was the big talking point. So Chris Froome, this sort of thing makes him really quite nervous. He hasn't got the best history in wet conditions. He'd be worried about, and his doctors will be worried about, secondary infection. So getting grit or grime in there when you're sweating, or if you happen to crash again, go down on the same wound, that can spell disaster. So Contador, I expect, will stay completely rugged up as long as possible, only taking off the rain jacket in the just before the final run into the line.
Alberto Contador, we had a chance to catch up with him this morning before the stage started to talk about yesterday's crash. Everybody will try and talk to him later today about today's crash. Here he is, Alberto Contador. It's a hard day. I spent a night, but I'm happy because the crash yesterday was hard, yet I'm still here this morning. This stage will be complicated because of the final. I hope I won't lose too much time because it is complicated, the finish of the stage today. I organised for his bike to be 1/2 yellow, 1/2 green.
That is quick.
It was an Eddie Merckx bike riding for the edX Quick Step team.
And it's the Tour de France. Teams, sponsors, they make a special effort because it's a unique thing when you get to wear a jersey in the Tour de France. You see it with Mark Cavendish in yellow, how emotional it made him to take that jersey for the first time in his career and also complete the set of Grand Tour leaders' jerseys. Yes, he's not winning the thing overall by the time we get to Paris, but in cycling, it's so prestigious to lead one of these major tours, one of the Grand Tours. And in the history of cycling, there are now only 19 riders who have led all 3 Grand Tours, and Mark Cavendish, since yesterday, is a member of that club.
It's a select club. Cavendish, the latest member. This is the 26-year-old Norwegian Breen, who at the national championships just a few weeks ago finished 5th in the individual time trial, 9th in the road race. Riding the Tour de France for the first time, but he has ridden the Tour of Spain in the past, so he knows what's required to get through 21 stages worth of racing. 3,535 kilometres. Surely when you're racing the Tour, you can't take a look at that total kilometre mark and say, well, this is how I'm going to approach to get to Paris. It's just that classic one day at a time at the early stages.
Sometimes it's even less than a day at a time. In the case of the sprinters who struggle in the mountains, it's a case of taking it one mountain at a time. And when you get to the bottom of a mountain, don't look up. Just keep pedaling. You'll be there eventually. It makes it worse if you look at the top because it seems never ending.
This is Marcus Burkhardt in the red colours, Bernard Eisel in the white. They're both former teammates. They used to ride together at the HTC Columbia team, or HTC Columbia High Road. And Marcus Burkhardt, when riding with that team in 2008, he managed to win a stage of the Tour de France into Saint-Etienne when he got the better of Sylvain Chavanel, who we just saw a few moments ago, back in the service of his team car. Lush green countryside, and it's no surprise it is so green when we're in the middle of summer and it's been so wet this afternoon. Here's Chavanel about to come back to the group, and the rider that he's with is Jan Barkeland. So 2 men at the back of the peloton, 3 in fact when you put Thomas Voeckler amongst them, who know what it's like to be Mark Cavendish today, wearing the yellow jersey on the roads of France.
Well, it's something that Thomas Voeckler has been able to build his career around, stints in the yellow jersey, and long ones at that. He spent 1 year in 2004, 10 days in yellow, and the next time he wore it, he spent a week in the yellow jersey. The sponsors then had plenty of time to deck him out completely yellow, head to toe.
He went full yellow. His group still working well together. Make their way through the town of Banville-Carretré. A church in this town of Saint-Germain-Auxerre, which is dedicated to Saint-Germain-Auxerre, was built in 1140, roughly. That's when construction started. The city was also liberated by the 69th Regiment of the 9th US Infantry Division on June the 18th, 1944, who then installed the defence line, and the Americans stayed here until autumn of 1945. And each July they have a kite festival. And if you're riding a bike race in a town where there's a kite festival and you don't like your chances of fighting for position at the front in the crosswind, it's time to do some training early and a crash course in contending with the wind.
Or you're in the wrong town.
Or you're in the wrong town. Plenty of Belgian flags, as always, on the side of the road. And they're cheering on number 67, Jesper Stuyven, who's really been enjoying the last few seasons with this team, getting the chance to learn from the great Fabian Cancellara. Big shoes to fill when Fabian Cancellara retires for Trek Segafredo when it comes to the Spring Classics. And number 67 in the breakaway today is the man they've got their hopes pinned on.
Big shoes to fill and a lot of pressure. And on top of that, in Belgium, they've been calling Jesper Stuyven the next Fabian Cancellara. So for a young rider, that's an enormous amount of pressure. But so far, so good for Stuyven, a stage winner in the Vuelta, and the winner of Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. So quality wins, and really discovering something new again here in the Tour de France, where he'll learn an enormous amount, but not overawed by the situation or by the occasion. Popped himself straight in the breakaway on day 2. And they're going to have to put on a pretty hard chase to catch Stuyven, but they'll be fairly aware of his talents. 63 kilometres to go, 5.5 minutes. No, it's normally not enough to stay away, but Stuyven's going to make it last a long, long time.
Winter from these 3 will have led the race from start to finish, if that's the way it's going to be.
And whoever wins it from this group of 3, well, one of the two of the riders out of the 3 will be the new yellow jersey. There is Chris Froome sitting in 3rd position, starting to move up the outside. You've got the dark blue and black jerseys of Etixx Quickstep. I think they're the big losers on today's stage, because Jules Alaphilippe would have been a big favourite to get the victory here this afternoon. That's Alaphilippe just over to the left-hand side, but Sky very much in control.
And they appear to be chasing now, which is surprising me a little bit, unless they're trying to launch somebody. Tinkoff are moving their men up, including Contador on the far right. They're going mano a mano here. The team protected favourites are getting themselves right at the front. Hopefully not going to get caught out. The point is, they know they can lose and gain even seconds on this climb. So the favourites of the Tour are now seeking out each other so they can keep an eye on them.
Well, it's certainly now, Phil, come down to 2 different races. The 3 leaders are looking to win the stage. These are riders who are being left behind now. Daniel Tekla-Heimanot now has been dropped. He did a lot of pacemaking in the early part of this race. And this just goes to show you the kind of pressure that's being applied at the front end of this group.
It is a great finishing ride now. 8.9 kilometres to go. Watch out for the riders we think could be featuring in this race in future. Now, oh, the legs. I think the legs went there on Paul Voss, who's in that breakaway. It looks as though he slowed dramatically just at that point.
Well, you know, Phil, we talked early on about poor old Peter Sagan. We were talking about this was an ideal stage for him, but look at the speed of the three leaders. They've hit this nasty little incline. Now, all of a sudden, they will have 30 seconds shaved off their advantage here just because of how tough this climb is, because the main field will not slow down when they hit this slope.
Well, there's a big crowd watching. They'll have no idea that these three riders have led the race from kilometre 1. The peloton are under 10 to go now. It's about a 1.3 kilometre spread. That was the rear end of the main field there. And it's left to Paul Voss, who I think is absolutely shattered, who's keeping those pedals going round.
Yeah, I think the psychological... Look at this.